Now we will wind up the conservation of the forest with the National Forest Policy. National Forest Policy and Forest Right Acts, which was promulgated in the year 2006. Okay, now we should know the background of these two National Forest Policy. Now we have all studied in the previous section, the previous video, about how the British people were trying to bring all the blames upon the tribals as a reason for the depletion of the forest, for the deforestation. They were all blaming the tribals that it was they who exploited the forest by cutting down the forest trees and by maximum using of the forest produce. Okay, but it was actually, in fact, it was the British people who were doing that, and to hide their mistakes, to hide their exploitation, they blamed the tribals for that. Okay, now what happened for the last 150 years, it was the tribals who were fighting for their rights. So it was their rights to live in the forest and to use the forest produce, because for generations of generations they have been, they are the natives of the forest. They know how to conserve the forest, they know how to protect the ecosystem. Okay, now what happened, this struggle led to the Indian government to frame a very important policy, first policy after the independence, that is a National Forest Policy in the year 1988. Okay, so this policy, what it did, it acknowledged the crucial role of the tribal and local communities in conserving, in protecting the forest. Okay, so this forest policy states that, it says that forests must be utilized in a manner that creates livelihood for the communities that live near them. And therefore, this forest policy also accepts that the tribals and other forest dependent communities, they have got the right to forest produce for their personal consumption. So this forest policy in a way relaxed the law that was enacted by the British. Okay, so relaxed in the sense that it acknowledged that the tribal communities, they play a vital role in protecting the forest, in conserving the forest, and therefore it gave them the permission to use the forest produce for their own personal consumption. Okay, now what happened, now this forest policy brought a kind of a program, so it's called Joint Forest Management Program. So according to this management program, the tribals got their right to collect fodder. They can collect the forest produce, okay, and then all the fodder for their own cattles, fuel, wood, minor forest produce, okay, and they also have got the right to livelihood as a forest, as a part of forestry operations. But at the same time, this forest policy gave some kind of limitations, some kind of conditions. So what are the conditions? So those forming the forest land, okay, so those who are using the forest for agriculture, okay, so those forming the forest land were pressurized to give up their right to the land so that the forest could regenerate. So what happened, so all those who were clearing some patches of the land in the forest in order to have agriculture. Okay, so what they were asked to do, they were asked to give up their right, to leave their right to the agriculture in the forest land. Okay, so that the forest can once again regrow, regenerate. Okay, these days what happened, the large tracts of forest across India are being marked as a tiger conservation. So this was done in order to conserve the tiger. So India is known for the tiger. So tiger is supposed to be a national animal. Okay, so in order to protect the tiger, in order to uphold the tiger protection conservation program, this was done. Okay, then what happened, this led to the large displacement of the lakhs of tribals. So when government marks particular tract of land as a tiger conservation land, which means no one can live there, it totally comes under the reserved area. in which people cannot live, and therefore what happened, this led to the displacement. Many tribals were removed, forcefully removed from those areas which government marked as a tiger rehabilitation area, no, center, like. Okay, so what happened now, this led to the impoverization of the tribals. So those who were removed from the forest, they couldn't do anything. Okay, they became very poor. Okay, so this led to the impoverization of the tribals. Okay, so government was finally able to observe the plight of the tribals. Okay, now what happened, this acknowledges for the first time. Okay, what acknowledges, then again government brought in a revised forest policy, okay, in the year 2006. Okay, and they acknowledge for the first time the injustice that they have done to the tribals for the past 200 years by not recognizing the forest rights they have been enjoying. Okay, now finally the government began to understand the real situation of the tribals. Then it acknowledged that the tribals, they really work in order to keep the ecosystem in balance. Okay, right, now it is this Forest Right Act that was promulgated in the year 2006, gave all the right to the tribals in order to keep the ecosystem in balance. Okay, so under this act, the tribals and other traditional forest dependent communities, they were given their traditional forest rights. Okay, so once again what happened, they were given their rights back, and the ownership of the land they had been cultivating. Okay, so if this act is properly implemented, then centuries old injustice done to the tribals and other forest dependent communities will be rectified. Okay, so this act recognizes their ownership of the forests. Okay, so if this act is properly implemented, then the century old injustice done to the forest, done to the tribal communities and other communities that were dependent on the forest will be rectified. Okay, so while this act was being debated in parliament, many conservationists expressed the concern about its possible misuse. So many were saying it could be misused, even though government did everything keeping in mind the livelihood of the tribals, okay, the tradition, but still many conservationists, they were fighting against it. Okay, so they felt that the forest dependent people may begin to exploit the forest commercially instead of using it for their personal consumption. So what happened, these people, these conservationists, what they did, even the tribals and then the forest dependent communities, influenced by the modern culture, could even misuse the forest produce commercially. They can cut the trees that they can sell. Okay, whatever produce that they get freely, they can sell, and then they can make money out of it. Okay, so there were many others who felt that awarding this right to the tribals who had been conserving their forests centuries was the only way to protect the forest. Okay, so they said still we need to regularize this forest policy. Okay, now so based on these discussions in the government, in the parliament, based on the Forest Rights Act in the year 2006, now we have certain important points which all of you who are living in the forest, the tribals should know. So we are given some 5 important points. Of course, you should read them, you should understand.